Welcome. I'm Tracy Smith, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Author and illustrator David Macaulay has written over 24 children's books throughout his career. His books touch on topics from the human body to cathedrals and even toilets. Macaulay is known as America's explainer-in-chief because in each of his books, he explains how things work. He told our Martha Teichner how important sketching is to his process.
He wanted us to realize that for him, sketching is seeing.
So now you're looking up under the road.
Sketching is a language for understanding.
We look at things, but do we actually see them? What better way to spend time with a structure like this than with a sketchbook in your hand? Looking at specific details. I think that's my goal in a way, is to have people open their eyes to the ordinary, to the everyday, to the things they take for granted.
Later in the show, David Macaulay on the connection between his mind and his sketching.
Is there a direct connection between your brain and your hand in the sketching process, or are they separate? Do you think by sketching?
I'm thinking all the time I'm sketching. I'm asking questions as I'm sketching, because you can draw so far and then you realize that you've come across something and you have to get past it. So you ask more questions and you sketch further. It's how I learn. It's how I teach myself, because you have to remember that when I take on these books, I don't necessarily know anything about the subject.
Then we visit Black Beauty Ranch in East Texas, home to around 600 animals, including lions, zebras, and bison, with all of them coming from different rescue situations. This ranch is just one of the many ways the nonprofit Humane World for Animals protects species around the world from cruelty. Conor Knighton sat down with CEO Kitty Block to learn more about their foundation.
For the past 70 years, the Humane Society of the United States, based in Washington, D.C., has worked on issues ranging from investigating the international fur trade to advocating for disaster relief plans that take animals into account. The organization announced it's changing its name. To reduce confusion and better reflect its global focus, it will now be known as Humane World for Animals.
Our mission still is about getting at the root causes to prevent tomorrow's cruelties, but also helping animals in crisis today. What the new name does is reflects what we do, how we do it, and where we do it.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. David Macaulay studied architecture as a student at the Rhode Island School of Design. But instead of planning buildings, he uses his eye for detail to explain how things work in children's picture books. Macaulay's a star in children's book publishing. He's won multiple awards and also received a MacArthur Genius Grant. He sat down to discuss how sketching is seeing with our Martha Teichner.
Confession. I'm just mad about the mammoth, the one that wandered out of the Ice Age into one of author-illustrator David Macaulay's books, where he found his purpose in life, if that's a mammoth thing, helping Macaulay explain the way things work to kids.
I was desperate to find a humorous way of explaining levers. So I put the mammoth on the end of the log and put the log on the rock to have a fulcrum, and the villagers on this end of the lever. The problem that had to be solved was, what does the mammoth weigh? So it was as simple as that.
Since it came out in 1988, the book has sold more than 1 million copies around the world. Mammoth and a whole herd of his friends have made their way into other Macaulay books. Do you have any idea how many mammoths you've drawn?
It's like 43, 272, I believe.
43,272 mammoths.
That's just a guess, but...
With or without the help of mammoths, but always with a sense of humor, David Macaulay has come to be known as America's explainer-in-chief. He is a multi-award-winning star in the children's picture book world, a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient, having explained all kinds of things in more than 24 books over the course of his 50-plus year career. The human body, cathedrals, castles, toilets, the pyramids, ships, the city of Rome.
I miss Rome, and I think about it often, and I think about particular streets and places in Rome.
As an architecture student at the Rhode Island School of Design, Macaulay spent a year there. Born in England, he moved to the United States at the age of 10 with his family.
It says chaos.
Chaos, that's where this process started, and in fact, it's where all my books start.
An ongoing exhibit at the National Building Museum in Washington, D.C. explores the messiness of creating a book.
This whole thing is the inside of my brain, and those clouds floating overhead were an attempt to sort of suggest some of that. You know, the things that go through your mind when you think, this is not going to work.
Some of these look like procrastination.
Oh, procrastination is my gift. I always find that in the end, if I'm using my imagination, if I'm asking the right questions, then the procrastination is working in my favor. And I have to keep drawing, I have to keep...
And drawing, and drawing. These are just some of the drawings he produced while he was figuring out who would be the ideal tour guide of Rome with the perfect point of view.
Why not a pigeon carrying a message from somebody who lives outside the city to someone who lives inside the city? I mean, it took the scenic route, which was ideal.
Early one fall morning, David Macaulay brought us here.
Obviously a piece of engineering.
This side is Vermont. Over there, New Hampshire, the Connecticut River in between.
And then we've got an arch.
He began sketching the bridge.
The weight of all of this stuff is supported on this arch and transferred into these piers.
He wanted us to realize that for him, sketching is seeing.
So now you're looking up under the road.
Sketching is a language for understanding.
We look at things, but do we actually see them? What better way to spend time with a structure like this than with a sketchbook in your hand? Looking at specific details. I think that's my goal in a way, is to have people open their eyes to the ordinary, to the everyday, to the things they take for granted.
Like the sorts of things both man-made and natural that Macaulay sees when he walks his dogs, Maya and Minnow, in Norwich, Vermont, where he lives.
There we go. Huh? Once she's stopped and I'm holding the leash, you know, I think, I wonder how many pieces of wood are in that fence. I wonder how it's fastened together.
Walks with Stella, his beloved previous dog, are the basis for the book he's working on now.
I'm looking up at this fire escape contraption above, and I'm thinking...
What's starting to take shape on his wall is David Macaulay's stealth attempt to hook kids on the wonder right before their eyes.
I thought, maybe I can create a book that will help them connect. And what better way to do that than to maybe use myself as an example?
Have you ever done anything this personal and this introspective before?
No, this is the first.
At 78, this time, the point of view is his own. But why? And why now?
My sort of conscience, perhaps, a little payback here after all these years of being able to do what I want, really, and be successful at it, be rewarded for it. Now it's time to maybe pay that off.
Up next, an exclusive excerpt from Martha Teichner's chat with David Macaulay, something you can only see right here on Here Comes the Sun. Stay with us. As promised, here's more from Martha Teichner's interview with David Macaulay.
When you approach a building or an object, whether it's a cathedral, whether it's a machine, whether it's something else, an animal, how do you learn about it in your own mind? How do you go about figuring it out?
Well, I think the first question I ask is, why does it look like that? Why does it look the way it looks? And that leads you to, well, what is it doing? What is its purpose? That leads you down a variety of alleys. You know, where does it live? What does it eat? If it's an animal, obviously, what's its life like? If it's a building, who is it meant for? What were we supposed to feel looking at the building from the outside? Why is it shaped the way it is? Why is that material used? Why is it reflective? Why has it been turned into a gigantic mirror? And so I just ask questions. And that's what the sketchbooks are for. I don't necessarily draw the answers to these because I don't necessarily know them. But the first step for me is always asking the questions. And they start to flow once you open that door.
Is the sketching always part of the questioning?
The sketching for me is definitely part of the questioning when I'm teaching myself, when I'm trying to answer the questions I asked. It's easy to ask the questions once you get started. It's harder to answer them. So if I'm looking at a building, for instance, or a piece of machinery, I take them apart in the sketchbook. I can't take them apart. Maybe the machine I can, although maybe not. Maybe it's too complicated and I won't actually learn anything. But nevertheless, in the sketchbook, you can dismantle anything, page by page. And you just keep drawing over and over and over again.
Is there a direct connection between your brain and your hand in the sketching process, or are they separate? Do you think by sketching?
I'm thinking all the time I'm sketching. I'm asking questions as I'm sketching because you can draw so far and then you realize that you've come across something and you have to get past it. So you ask more questions and you sketch further. It's how I learn. It's how I teach myself, because you have to remember that when I take on these books, I don't necessarily know anything about the subject. That's why I do them, I think. It's a brutal process.
Brutal?
Yes, in some cases I'm way out of my league right from the very beginning, and I sort of realize that this is going to be tricky. But you just stay with it. I fortunately have, a gift of patience, I guess it is, but also, determination. And I will give the questioning and the answering process as much time as it takes.
In addition to sketching, how do you go about learning what you need to do? What's your research process?
It involves a lot of reading, obviously. Books like Frank Netter's series on the body, wonderfully illustrated. That was invaluable. Older books on anatomy, just because of the style and the wonderful engravings and whatnot that were made for those books. And once I think I have enough information in my head to be able to ask intelligent questions, then I will try to engage help from the experts.
If there's anything in particular that you want people to know by creating the kinds of drawings and sketches and books that you do, what is it?
I guess it's the pleasure you can get from paying attention to stuff around you, whether it's architecture, whether it's a sort of a formal thing, whether it's a tree, whether it's a hole in the ground that wasn't there yesterday, whatever it is, it's just being aware. I find that really important, the awareness that promotes a kind of curiosity or builds on curiosity, which in and of itself is perhaps the most important thing I think I want to instill in my readers. I don't even pretend to give them all the information. I'm just trying to encourage them to feel like they are ready to start asking questions of their own.
Up next, creating a more humane world for animals. Welcome back. The nonprofit Humane World for Animals is dedicated to fighting and ending animal cruelty. They successfully established better living conditions for certain species of livestock in California and worked to shut down the dog meat market in South Korea. Conor Knighton spoke to Humane World of Animals CEO Kitty Block about the company's mission to improve the welfare of animals globally.
The sprawling Black Beauty Ranch in East Texas takes its name from the classic 1877 novel. Narrated by a horse, Black Beauty encouraged readers to see the world from an animal's point of view.
The story of Black Beauty is about coming home and feeling free and safe. And so This is what all these animals get to do. Hey, sweetie.
Oh, you're curious.
Kitty Block is the CEO of the Humane Society of the United States. The nonprofit which runs Black Beauty has a sanctuary. There are zebras and macaques, bison and lions.
So I think we're about 1,400 acres, and they've all come from various rescue situations. Each one has an incredible story.
There's Loki the tiger, rescued from someone's garage in Houston. There's Eve, known as the Bear Bear, who was once so hairless and emaciated that rescuers initially didn't know what she was.
These are our beautiful lemurs. These guys were in a very dark, small place, did not have anything that resembled this kind of life. So it's amazing to see them, how they've taken to their habitat.
Yeah.
The ranch's first residents were wild donkeys, airlifted from the Grand Canyon by Black Beauty's founder, author, critic, and animal rights activist Cleveland Amory.
Here we got in this canyon the most highly publicized donkeys in the world. And we're going out to shoot them, for God's sakes?
Today, the sanctuary's home to 150 donkeys. But if you're wondering where all of the dogs and cats are hiding, well, the Humane Society of the United States isn't actually affiliated with the thousands of humane societies that operate shelters across the country.
Local humane societies do take care of dogs, cats, pets, sometimes other animals, and they are amazing places, and we work really closely with them. But that's not us. We are a policy organization. We are a lobbyist shop. We work around the world, and we do rescue, but you can't get your dog or cat from us.
For the past 70 years, the Humane Society of the United States, based in Washington, D.C., has worked on issues ranging from investigating the international fur trade to advocating for disaster relief plans that take animals into account. The organization announced it's changing its name. To reduce confusion and better reflect its global focus, it will now be known as Humane World for Animals.
Our mission still is about getting at the root causes to prevent tomorrow's cruelties, but also helping animals in crisis today. What the new name does is reflects what we do, how we do it, and where we do it.
After nearly a decade of intense campaigning, the group recently celebrated a win in South Korea.
God, it just feels endless, rows and rows and rows of them.
Last year, that country's National Assembly voted to ban the dog meat industry.
Hi, pretty girl.
What's happening right now that in 5-10 years you think people will look back on and say, I can't believe we did that?
I hope it's less than 5 or even 10 years, but I think the situation with the factory farming is one that we will all look back on and say, really, did we do that? Did we confine animals in these terrible, extreme situations just because it was cheaper or easier, or if we just throw them all together and seal the doors, people won't know it's happening?
Humane World for Animals successfully defended California's Proposition 12 at the Supreme Court. The law established minimum space requirements for certain species of livestock.
Confining animals in extremely terrible situations where animals are stacked in cages on top of cages, it creates conditions where there are illnesses. So there's swine flu, there's bird flu. We can't keep pretending that it has nothing to do with us.
Protecting the 600 or so residents of this ranch is, in a way, a symbolic act for an organization looking to improve the welfare of animals all around the world. Symbolic, like the name Black Beauty. As Kitty Block explains, the ability to consider an animal's perspective is part of what makes us human.
It's important not just for the animals, but it's important for us, who we are, how we think about ourselves, how we want to have a world that we pass on to our children and our children's children. Animals belong there. And so we are committed to making sure that they have that life, they have that ability to thrive, because it matters to all of us.
I'm Tracy Smith. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time on Here Comes the Sun.